In this video, I will try to better explain how position relative affects the way that specific elements will be rendered. So on the left hand of the screen, I have a couple files open. This is an index.html file on the left. It's very simple. I've collapsed the head just so that it's not confusing. We can just assume that all the stuff that's in the head is great and it's linked to this CSS file. But you'll see that there's in the body, there's an h1, which we won't affect. I just put it there as a label. And then we have a div with a class of wrapper. And inside that div is an empty div with a class of p and a paragraph with some faked up text in it called lorem ipsum. So the h1, I just made it a little bit smaller. The wrapper, I've given it a width of 500 pixels and a height of 500 pixels. A little bit of margin to separate it from that. And then a background of a fairly light gray. That's this box here. So the margin, 30 pixels auto, 30 pixels on top, 30 pixels on bottom, auto on the left and right to center it up. And then inside it is a div. This red div has a class of p, so I'm styling that particular class. Has a width of 100, height of 100, margin bottom of 10 pixels, and a background of red. So what we want to do is talk about how the position relative would affect this red square. So by default, everything is position static, which means that based upon the hierarchy of the HTML, the fact that this is a child of wrapper means that wherever wrapper goes, it too goes. So because I've made wrapper 500 pixels wide and centered up, because it's inside of wrapper, it follows suit. But by default, everything is up to the top left. So the origin of this red square, which is this tiny corner, matches up with the origin of this square, which is this one right here. It's a block level element. All divs are block level, which means that the paragraph, which is also block level, will go directly below it, just like this. So that is its normal behavior. So just think of it this way: when it's static, it's in its own origin of 0, 0. So now let's apply a style of position relative. So I'm going to put position relative, but I'm not going to put anything else. So let's just see what that looks like. So nothing happens, right? Because just because it's relative, the position of relative, it doesn't force it to move anywhere else. It just stays where it is. But now its position attribute is different. It's no longer position static, it's just position relative. What this means is that if we reposition the element using the top, left, bottom, or right properties, CSS properties, then it will position it relative to where it is right now. So let's try that. So if I give it a value of left of, say, 100 pixels, what this is going to do is it's going to take the left-hand side of it and it's going to push away from that by 100 pixels. So let's reload this page. So the interesting thing about this is that just because we've just told it to, hey, take this red square and render it over here, the browser still kind of thinks that it's right here. So we've told it to render relative to its current location. But it's still there. It just looks like it's over here. So let's change this left value to top value. So if I save this, it moves. Because what's happened is when it's at its origin, it was here. So when its top, left, right, and bottom values are 0, it's where it would be were it static. So the browser will always consider it to be in that same position, which means that the paragraph stays where it is, because the paragraph, which is a block level element, is abiding by the rules that say that it should never creep up into the place where another block level element is. But now, because it's position relative and we've given it a top value of 100 pixels, what's being rendered is the square has moved from here to here. So the behavior is a little weird, but the way to think about it is that position relative is relative to where it would be if it was position static. So if I move all of this away, just comment it out, save, come over here and reload, this is where it is if it's static. So by giving it position relative and a top value of 100, it's now going to move it 100 pixels from the top of its location if it was static. So it's relative to its own position. Just like that. So we can add multiple values here. If I say right of 50 pixels, what this will do is it will calculate the top value from where it was at its origin, move it down 100 pixels, and then also move it 50 pixels from where it was. So it's going to go down 100 pixels and to the left 50 pixels. So it takes the right-hand side and pushes away from it by 50 pixels. So let's save this, reload this, and you can see it went down 100 pixels and to the left 100 pixels because it pushed from the top 100 pixels and from the right 50 pixels. So that's it. So if we change this to left, we will get a very similar behavior. It will push from the top 100 pixels and from the left 50 pixels. So now if we reload, it offsets itself. But the thing to remember is with position relative, everything else on the page, the div, the gray div, and the paragraph still think it's right here.